Thank you, everybody, for staying here after lunch. We're ready to get back started again for some more real fun stuff. Great. So today, I want to discuss with you the differences between the two types of submissions, discuss our registration and listing compliance program, discuss our common registration and listing data errors with lots of examples, and discuss how to address the submission errors to get open cases resolved quickly. Starting off with submission errors. So an automated validation error is something that you may get when you're trying to submit a registration SPL or a drug listing SPL. What happens once you submit this SPL, after a little while, you will get an email from CDER saying to log in to check your status. And so in this process, the system is going through a validation process and it's trying to find errors that it can catch, and it'll stop the process and stop the submission from going through if it finds certain errors. So these are system-generated errors that occur before an electronic submission is considered accepted. So the firm is notified, and if there's no errors, then it's submitted, it's accepted, it's passed. But if it finds errors, you'll be able to click on the error and you'll be able to go back and correct it if there's anything that you can correct. And let's say it doesn't find any errors, it's passed. That doesn't mean that there are no more errors. So this is where our compliance review comes in. We do a manual review of the data through our surveillance projects. And this is what we find after the submission is accepted as passed. So we find these compliance errors, and these errors we will notify you through our deficiency letters. So this brings us to go into our compliance program. So our program was established in the fall of 2015, and we have a mission to achieve an accuracy and integrity of the establishment data. So we have a mission to achieve the accuracy and integrity of establishment data in the drug and registration drug listing data. And we do this through 4 main phases. The first phase is surveillance. As we mentioned, we do focus and random reviews to find errors. And sometimes we're often notified from people within the FDA and outside of FDA for different type of errors that are out there in the data. And once we find these errors, the next step or phase is the deficiency letter. So we also first, when we find the errors, we create a case in the system. And we also send the firm a friendly letter, which is also the deficiency letter. And we clearly state in that, tells you what the error is, and we give you 30 days to correct this error. And if the firm decides to correct it, everything is good, it's accepted, then we close the case. Let's say that they don't correct anything, it's been past 30 days, then we move on to the next step, which is data removal. And at this time, we also send the firm another notification with an email saying that your data will be removed now because nothing was done to fix the errors. And so then at that point, we remove the data from the NDC directory. And also you'll notice that at the NDC directory, next to the product NDC in the name, you'll see a letter E, and it'll say this data was removed for inaccuracy. And after that, if there's still no correction made, then we move on to more further actions, which may include untitled letters or warning letters. All right. Now we're going to get to a poll question where we're going to use the audience here and online. And I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to give you the choices. So which one of these is a compliance review error? Is it A? Is the ID, registrant stunt number must not be associated with any other set ID of document type, establishment registration. B, if the NDC product item code was previously submitted, then the product name is the same as the most recent submission for this NDC product item code. C, blanket no change certification product listing documents must be submitted during the time frame of October 1st to December 31st each year. And D, the choice is the NDC in this listing SPL does not match the NDC on the carton label. Now we're going to go ahead and see, well, what do you guys think the answer is? Which one? D? Sounds good. So let's see what the audience says. The answer is D in the audience also. Awesome. Sounds good. You guys already know this. All right, so now go back to the next. This leads us to talk about the compliance errors. So these are the top reasons why you might get a registration, a deficiency letter from us related to registration errors. So the firm is an established, manufacturing establishment is not currently registered, but they are engaged in a manufacturing process. Or the drug, they're non-drug manufacturers, but they're registered with FDA and they should not be there, the PLDs or the importers. Or there's outdated establishment address or contact information, or it's missing a US agent or importer information, or there's incorrect business operations. So now let's go into the top drug listing compliance errors. So the most common one that we see is probably related to the strength of the active ingredient. There's a lot of errors with incorrect calculations and conversion from the percent to the weight and volume or weight to weight ratio that needs to be used to submit the listing SPL. There's incorrect presentation in the listing SPL. That happens a lot with products that are a patch dosage form. It can be presented in several different ways, but you need to remember whichever way you're using to present is consistent throughout the listing and the SPL so that there's no confusion and misinformation out there. Another possible error with strength is related to the missing or incorrect units of measure. Sometimes they're just completely missing. Sometimes they're the wrong ones. More sources of error are related to the National Drug Code. There's a mismatch in the labeling in the SPL, or there's a source NDC that's used in the labeling in the carton label and how supplied section. It should be of the submitters of the repackagers NDC, or there's a discontinued NDC that's used in the labeling. More errors we see are with active ingredients. There's an incorrect or mismatched list of the active ingredients in the listing SPL versus the labeling. We see this a lot happens with OTC drugs and with RX drugs. With labeling, there can be an incorrect carton label. The image can belong to a totally different drug than the one that's being listed, or the image of is of a different strength of the drug. There's a lot of errors with the proprietary names not matching. The route of administration may not be the same, or it may be incorrect, or it doesn't match. Dosage form errors happen a lot. Packaging information is not always complete. Sometimes when there's an inner layer of a product and it should be listed as another package code, it's not listed. It needs to be. Application number may be incorrect also. And so also remember that we know that drug manufacturers and repackagers sometimes use a reference listing files to list their drugs. For example, generic manufacturers will reference an NDA as their reference listed drug to list their drug, and repackagers will use a source drug to list their drug. But be aware that these listings themselves might have errors. So be careful and don't just copy the information over without checking it. And so when we do our repackager reviews, we also do check the source drug listing to make sure that's also correct. If you find an error with the source drug listing, let us know, please. That would be helpful. A few other issues to know: repackager listing submissions must include the repackager's NDC in the house supplied section and in the carton label, and the source drug cited must also be actively listed. Now I'm going to go through some actual examples of errors that we see. So here's an example of incorrect strength and incorrect active ingredient. So these are the images from the package insert section and from the carton label image. As you can see in the top snapshot is that this is saying this is otic solution, single dose vial of ciprofloxacin 0.3%. Delivers 0.25 mL of the solution equivalent to ciprofloxacin 0.75 milligrams, right? And then also in the package, in the carton label image, the side panel also clearly tells you that it's 0.25 mL of the cipro hydrochloride equivalent to 0.75 milligrams of cipro, right? And also note that it's not very clear, but you can see that the polysorbate is included as an inactive ingredient here. So then when we actually look at our listing and you see the drug data element of the strength in the SPL, you're seeing that they haven't listed the Cipro strength as 0.75 milligrams. They listed it as 872.5 micrograms. So the microgram is okay to list if it's consistent and calculated correctly. If it was that, it would have been 750 micrograms, not 872.5. And also, we noticed that the polysorbate, which was an inactive ingredient, they've incorrectly listed it as an active ingredient here. The next error is also incorrect strength, but you can see how the unit of measure used here can be very misleading and confusing. So this is a tablet that's 500 milligrams. It's a solid dose form. You don't need to have a denominator for it. It's just per one, right? But here they're choosing to use a length measurement, millimeter, to describe the strength of this tablet. So they're saying it's 500 milligrams in 1 millimeter. And then when you look at the next, it's saying the size of the tablet is 12 millimeters. So that's going to imply that the strength of the tablet is 6,000 milligrams. That's crazy. And then also in the package description, they're using millimeter again. They actually meant tablets. There are 16 tablets in the package, but so this can be very confusing and it's just not a good thing to have somebody looking at this and just figure out what's going on. Here's a simple one. This is an example of an incorrect carton label. So they're choosing to list, or their label is of the 10/325 milligram strength, but the actual one they listed was the 10/500 milligram strength. So we have another poll question. So how would you convert the strength of hydrocortisone ointment with the concentration of 2.5% into a weight in weight presentation to list in the SPL strength section? Is it A, 2.5 grams over 2.5 grams, B, 0.25 milligrams over 100 grams, C, 25 milligrams over 1 gram, D, 25 grams of 30 grams. 30 grams is the size of the tube of the hydrocortisone. What do you guys think the answer is? What? I didn't hear it. C? You say C? All right, let's see what the audience said. Yay! Most of you guys in the audience out there are smart. That's great. There are a lot of people out there who cannot calculate this stuff. So just to go over this, I was just going to explain quickly how they calculated it. It's a simple thing. I probably don't need to do it for you guys, but we're going to go over it anyway. So 2.5% is equal to 2.5 grams in 100. And we want to list it in a weight over weight ratio with the units milligram over gram, right? So that means it's 2.5 grams is equal to 2,500 milligrams. And this is equal to the ratio 2,500 over 100 grams. But we want to list it in 1 gram. So then it's just simple, 25 milligrams in 1 gram of the base. So in the data element section of the SPL, you would say for the numerator, 25 for the strength, milligram for the unit of measure. Sometimes we get all kinds of stuff, as you saw earlier. And for the denominator, you would just say 1 is the strength and gram is the unit of measure. And the package size is 30. That was simple. Now we have the strength conversion chart. This is something that you can find through our web page, or compliance web page. This is just a handy chart to tell you how to list certain type of products. For example, the alcohol, medical gases, and water should always be volume over volume. And as I mentioned, the oral, solid oral should be weight over weight, or weight over each. And then the patches, as I mentioned earlier, it can be 3 different ways. It can be weight over time, or weight over each. So just make sure that it's consistent. Sometimes there's a lot of confusion with that. Now we have some fun facts and myths. Simple stuff that you guys have heard already. I think everybody knows this now. So contract manufacturers must list all drugs they manufacture using their own NDC and labeler code. Is this a fact or a myth? Fact. Next, private label distributors are required to register with FDA. Myth. 2 more. Contract manufacturers Contract manufacturer listings do not require the submission of the package insert. Fact or myth? Fact. Very good. Next, last one. Contract manufacturers' drug listings get published in Daily Med. True or not? No? The myth. Very good. They don't get published. They're just used in our internal system. And for the first one, they do not require submission of package insert, but they should have a carton label image, and that image should have the NDC of the CMO. All right, let's talk about how to resolve open compliance cases quickly and easily. So when firms try to submit or try to correct their deficiencies that we address in the deficiency letter, most of the time you will get an error. It won't let the submission pass until we get a manual override. Because, and we tell you this in the deficiency letter clearly that when you get these errors that you cannot correct, please email us and send us the list of the errors and send us the core ID of the failed submission. So when you do that, we will review it and contact you to make further changes if needed. Or if it's correct that we see that you've corrected it, we'll approve the manual override, but we'll have to contact the SPL coordinator because he's the one who actually performs the override in the system. And know that once the override is approved or submitted, please don't change anything with that submission, because if you do that, the core ID changes and then we can't see it quickly and it just takes time and it just delays everything. Also, manual overrides will only be granted for corrections to the specific error that you have identified, that was identified, but not necessarily for other errors that you may be generating while you're actually trying to fix this one. Also, know that all the errors that have been identified must be corrected before we can close the compliance case. Sometimes we get firms who just have more than one error in the deficiency letter, but they only address one of them and they just submit it. We won't close the case. And also, just submitting one with the new version number may get accepted, but if the case is not closed, if the deficiencies are not addressed, we can't close the compliance case, and you won't be able to, it won't extend the certification date until the case is closed. And then also, when a listing SPL is associated with an open compliance case, you can't use the blanket no change certification to certify your listing. You'll have to submit a corrected version of the SPL with all the errors gone, then that will be used as what you can use to certify, or it'll be considered up to date after that point. Now we have a challenge question, true and false. So a firm gets inspected by FDA and the officers find that there are no products manufactured there. This firm may be a private label distributor. Is this true or false? True. True. The last question. All right, how do you express the strength of alcohol in the listing SPL? A, weight over weight. B, weight over volume. C, volume over volume. D, volume over weight. C, answer is C. This is easy, right? Next. So we have a web page, a compliance web page, which is updated periodically. It has helpful resources and links on it, like the other chart I showed you, the strength conversion chart is over there. And also you'll be able to see all the list of our published listing registration warning letters to date. And if you don't already know, of course you probably already know, this is the website too, or the CDER direct email address. I guess we'll wait till afterwards.
All right. So this is your final exam here. So we're going to split you up. You have to submit cases that are on a pre-production environment If you pass it, great, thumbs up, you get your certificate. If not, rewind back to 9 a.m. and take this whole class over, okay? So Taz gave you all the answers already, so this should be pretty easy. So this is how we'll do it. So the learning objectives are, you guys should be able to troubleshoot the establishment registrations and drug listings, and then identify and fix the validation errors that are submitted in these SPLs. So this is the first time for us. We're going to divide into 3 groups. So we'll do this part as group 1. So just raise your hand, group 1. There you go. Group 2, raise your hand, group 2. And then group 3. There you go. And then I need one volunteer to actually do the submission. So of group 1, any volunteers? All right, I see one over there. Group 2, a volunteer to actually type in, okay. And group 3, a volunteer to type in. All right, right there. Okay, so you guys will have, woo! You guys will have 10 minutes to do this. So they're relatively simple. So the volunteers log on to your web browser and then type in the direct.preprod.fda.gov. So again, this is the pre-prod environment. So this is not, it's very similar to the real thing, but this is actually not going into the real database. And then just pay attention to the S part right here, because that may or may not direct you to the right page. So just make sure that it has a HTTPS. And after the 10 minutes, we'll reconvene and discuss the cases and solutions. And then a few of us will be walking around to help you guys in case you get stuck. Okay, so we'll do group 1 in the front and group 2 in the back. And then we had one volunteer here and the other volunteer there. So yeah, we'll be available to help walk around. So this is what this is your scenario, okay? So group 1, which is now here in the front row right here. Your product is detained at the border, all right? The evil Customs and Border Patrol. They say that your contract manufacturer has not listed your drug, but you have an NDC. So some questions to think about. Where do you check to verify your listing status, and what exactly are you checking? So the details, your drug is Wonder Drug, and your NDC is this, and your contract manufacturer, you're the private label distributor, your contract manufacturer is Placebo Pharma, and their labeler code is 12345. So in order to get into that pre-prod environment, you guys should log in using this username and password. And it's the same for all of them except for the last number here, the group number. So you'll already have your SPLs in there to manipulate and work through into 10 minutes. So group 2, which is now back there, what is it? Is it stopped when you're logging into the pre-prod? So not everybody can log on to the pre-prod environment. Only one person should be able to log in. And we can work that out once we're walking around. But it should be https://direct.preprod.fda.gov. Okay. So let me finish going through the scenarios, and when we walk around, we'll help you log on to the site and everything. And only the one representative should log on. Everyone go around them, and you can work together on that. So the group 2 scenario, you receive a deficiency letter from us that states your strength is incorrect. Okay. Ooh, and I'll give you a copy of that so you guys know what it looks like. So some questions to think about: how do you express the strength in SPL? And what steps do you take to resolve this deficiency? So your details, you're going to get a deficiency letter, and then the strength conversion chart that you just saw Taz post up there, that's the link towards it, so you can refer to that. Your username and password is the same as always, as the other ones except for the 2. Now for group 3, you guys, your scenario is that you are trying to certify your drugs, but it doesn't pass validation because it says that an establishment is expired. So what steps do you take to resolve this validation? And basically, you are Wonder Pharma, and that's your DUNS number, and this is how you log on to it. And this actually, Taz didn't refer to it. This was from previous ones. This is all the way in the morning. That's why I said you have to rewind back to 9 a.m. if you don't get this. So work through it. We'll help you, and then we'll reconvene in 10 minutes, and we'll go through everyone's answers so that everyone can get the benefit of all 3. Okay, so 10 minutes. Just for 1 and 2. So this is 1 in front, and I'll give it 2. Yeah, there's 2 things. So are you gonna go up to group 1 because I think she said she was gonna be group 2. Go up there with them. Yeah. So you guys are group 2, right? I think it was. Huh? Well, she was supposed to be group because we kind of split them here. So just come up to group 1, yeah. Okay. So she's group 2. They switched it on me, so let's see. Yeah. Okay. And then you guys can all pass. There's a bunch of them right here. So are you in?
Yes.
Okay, pre-prod. Okay. So it's FDA _ group _ 2, and then password all caps FDA pound. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So gather around and try to just kind of shift over down that way. Yeah. I like
Hello, online folks. We have not forgotten about you. Everybody in the room just completely ignore me. Online folks, please do not log in to that you're seeing on the screen using any of the things that you've seen. If you do, you're going to boot the people in the real live room here off the system. So this is an excellent time to get a little coffee and to reflect on these 3 case scenarios. We're going to be back in about 7 minutes, and we're going to have report outs on each one of those 3 scenarios. So this is a little break for you while the people here in the room work. If you have logged in to that pre-prod URL, please log out. And if you have not logged in, don't. We'll be back in about 7 minutes. All right, we're coming around to check on each of the groups, see how things are going, but please take about 1 more minute to wrap up and finish whatever changes you're going to make, and then Julian will be back up to go through each one of the case studies.
So let's reconvene, and then don't worry if you didn't get it all. You'll still get your certificate. But we'll teach you what the proper steps to do it and the easiest way to do it. But this is just a way to get you guys thinking, and definitely some cases were a little bit harder than others. So don't feel bad and don't feel too good if you got yours, and don't feel too bad if you didn't get yours. All right. So we don't want anybody getting big heads here. So this is the first case. So basically, what they had at first was an NDC labeler code request, and then they also had a drug listing already here. So it looks like they got as far as creating a new version right here, but that's basically as far as they got. So we'll delete this, and we'll just go. We'll start over from how to do this quickly and properly. So you have a drug product listing right here. So Wonder Pharma is the labeler. That's their DUNS, and this is Placebo Pharma was the one who made it. They're the contract manufacturer. They're under the establishment, and this is their product listing, and Wonder Drug, and that's the NDC. So basically, you're just creating the contract manufacturer's product listing, and you're just cloning it so that you can create exactly the same thing, but it needs to be listed under the contract manufacturer. So the easiest way to do that is after you have it's a submission accepted, then you just create a new version. And now this new version is exactly the same thing as what you just created, but because this is for a different labeler, you want to generate a new SPL. So you generate new, and it's now completely different SPL, and then since this is going to be your first version for that one, you can just do version 1. So now you have a new draft right here you're working on. So you can save that as a draft, and then now you're working on this draft. So since everything's the same establishment, everything, the only thing you need to change is the product NDC. So you just change the labeler code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you change the everything's the same, and then in the packaging section, change that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, save package. And so since you're the contract manufacturer, you're not actually marketing this drug, then you would be an OTC monograph drug product manufactured under contract. So you change the marketing category. So this tells customs that you're not, and tells us that you're not actually selling this under your name. Wonder Pharma is the one that's selling it under their name, but you're the one who made it. And so after you've made those changes there, you save this, all the product details. And then at that point, you're ready to submit. So you can just save and validate. This is this save and validate is something that's going to come soon to product listing. It's already there for establishment registration and the other ones. It's a quicker way because if you submit it, it has to go through the full validation through FDA. So that may take about 10, 15 minutes, maybe more, depending on how many submissions are being submitted at that time. So this is just a way for you to at least get through all the validation errors and work that out, save and validate. And then once it comes through as validated, then you can submit it. So it'll still take some time. Let me go to the official answers here. So while we wait for that to validate, basically some of the questions I asked you to think about. Where can you check to see that if something is listed or not listed? And that's at the NDC directory. So that's our URL for that. But if you just Google NDC directory, that will be the first link that will come up. And so in the NDC directory, if it does have a compliance case against you, it will be marked red with an E. So that's how you know that you have to fix something. So this is basically what we did. We cloned the SPL and CDER Direct and then generated a new set ID. And then we made sure to remove the references to other NDCs and black out or superimpose that, which we didn't do actually. I'll show you. And then just so you know, for a contract manufacturer, drug products manufactured under contract, you don't need the full content of labeling since it's not being marketed to the public, so you just need a representative sample. So to go back to this, let's see if it's validated yet. Validation failure. So what is it saying? Error in product with the NDC, error with the establishment, and after reviewing, so basically it's saying if the code is not, so this is the best way to read validation error. It's usually an if-then statement. So when you see this error, you just go, oh my God, that is, I don't know what that means. So just break it up into two parts. If the code is this, so you just kind of see which one applies to you, and then you skip to the then part, then there must be no ID application in the regulatory citation. So basically, I left this part in there, so I needed to have taken that out. So I mean, that looks so intimidating, but if you just break it down into two parts, so basically it said if I use OTC, if I didn't use an OTC monograph final, then I shouldn't have something in that field. So that's why that failed. So you save that product. And then there was another one, establishment, go to error. So it didn't like my establishment for some reason. Oh yeah, so in this establishment, there's one NDC here that I forgot to change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So remember, you have to get rid of all the other person's NDC. And there's one more thing that's not going to validate because it can't validate JPEGs. It's in the content of labeling. So in the content of labeling, if you just copied it from the PLDs, then you're going to still have references to their NDC. So you would have to edit this, edit, and then take out their part of the NDC. And then with regard to this, you see this is a JPEG. So we actually see this a lot, where a contract manufacturer and a PLD are just cloning it once, cloning each other, but then the product image refers to something else. So you need to either just make your own label that has your own NDC. You can black this label out. You can superimpose your label using Microsoft Paint. So that might just take a few minutes to do that. But that's what you would have to do. So currently, if you have this right here, it will pass validation, but it's not going to be correct. So we'll apply this for right now, and then we'll.
So Julian, I just wanted to add, just be mindful that, like Julian mentioned, the package insert part is not required. If you're leaving it in, you have to make sure the house supplied section matches your house supplied section. It includes your NDC, right? So if you leave it, if you just clone it and then ignore those NDCs, you might get some sort of deficiency letter that says you're including this NDC, which got nothing to do with your listed product, right? And so make sure that either the package insert is completely removed for a contract manufacturer, which is the best way to approach it, because your product technically is not going to reach the healthcare provider or the patient. So remove that completely. And then for the carton label, which is the required part of the labeling in your drug listing, make sure it's either no NDC on the label or the NDC that corresponds with the contract manufacturer's NDC. Thank you. We'll hold off on the question for just.
So okay, basically, so now we fixed all the errors that it said, and it's going to validate again, and so it should come up now with everything fixed. But so that's basically the process that you go through, and I'll log out of here in the interest of time, and we'll go back at the end just to see, make sure that it went through. But we'll log on to case number 2. So FDA. All right, so just to remind you guys, FDA 2 was they had a strength error. So let's see how far they got here. Wait, oh, they actually submitted it. They didn't just save and validate it. Okay. So
good job, group 2.
So yeah, they're overachieving here. So here they go. They have a they initially had this OTC drug label. This is what they had. So it's Wonder Drug ointment, and it's a 2% ointment. So if you look at what they have here, it's a 2% ointment, and this is the section. So initially, they have, if you look at the active ingredient, they said that it's 2 milligrams over 100 grams. So this is a pretty common error because a lot of people kind of think, oh yeah, 2 milligram, 2 over 100 is 2%. But because it's milligram over gram, this is absolutely not correct. So let's see if they fixed it. Let's see their math. So here we go, active ingredients. So here they did 2 grams over 100 grams, which is
good effort.
Yeah, that's 2%.
You need a pharmacist. You need to hire a pharmacist.
So and then so then it validated, and this is the error they got, that if the NDC was previously submitted, then the product dosage form must be the same as the most recent submission, and then the active ingredients. So basically, if you submit an NDC and it is, you use a strength, now it's telling you can't change the active ingredient strength. So we will approve a manual override if it's if you just listed it and you just made a mistake and it's not, it's just correcting an initial error. But if it's been out for a while and you're trying to change any active ingredient strength, that requires a new NDC, and that we will not approve that. You have to reassign it a new NDC. So then at this point, you would get this error. You email DRLS and ask us to review the submission. And if it's all right, then we'll send it for a manual override. If it's not, we'll ask you to fix it. So the official answers here. Okay, so it must be represented as a ratio. So 2%, 2 grams over 100, or you can reduce it down to 20 milligrams over 1 gram. So how about this question? Will this pass 2 milligrams over 100 milligram? Will that pass validation? So basically, you have to make sure that this denominator matches what you're saying. So if this is a 100-gram tube, you can't represent the strength as 100 milligrams. It has to be represented as a gram. So that's why this strength won't pass validation. And this is very similar to it's a liquid, except you would just use mLs, and it's 2 grams over 100 mLs, and then you reduce it down to 20 milligrams over 1 ml. And so, like I said, changes to strength are only allowed when fixing an initial error. Any other strength changes require an NDC. And then when you do that, you send us the core ID or the submission ID. It begins with a C, not the root ID, not the set ID, but the core ID. And then we're going to review it before we go for the manual override. So, all right. So, the last one here is group 3, and they were the first one to finish. So let's see if they rushed through it or they actually knew exactly what they were doing. So, okay, submission failed here. Why did it fail? So initially they had a blanket no changes certification. They had an OTC product listing, and then they had an establishment registration. So they submitted a new establishment registration, and it failed due to the done. So I think Travis, did it just fail because it's a fake DUNS that we were using? Or? One, two, three, four. Yeah, so basically the steps for here is that they go to establishment registration. Is that they submit a new establishment registration, and then after that, then they can resubmit the blanket no changes. So here we go. What you do is you the no changes certifications will only work if there are no changes that are necessary. So remember, when you're certifying a drug, you're certifying that there have been no changes. If there are changes, you have to update the product listing. So in order to do that, you must send an updated submission to the SPL that fixes the updated the establishment. So either you re-register that establishment or you add the new establishment that you're using. So, all right. This is our very first case study. If you have any compliance questions, it goes to either DRLS at fda.hhs.gov. But if you have technical questions about your submissions, you can send that to CDER at fda.hhs.gov to get that submission help through. And that is it for my presentation. But we will have questions.